you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. Welcome to episode 48. Today I am speaking with Cory. Hi, Cory.
Hi, Lily. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there in the midst of the pandemic.
I know. It's nuts. Both of us have kids, and we're trying to do that amid coronavirus, and that's challenging, doing schoolwork online, we were just talking about.
I feel pretty lucky that my daughters are self-sufficient enough, so I really don't have to do anything. I just sit in my room and paint.
That I am waiting for that. I'm waiting for that self-sufficient age. It's coming soon, I hope.
Yes, hold on. You can make it.
I can. I love your name, by the way.
Thank you.
I didn't know if I was going to be speaking with a man or woman, Cory, until you sent me your blog. You sent me the link for it, and I clicked on it and I saw pictures. This is a beautiful blog. You're a really good writer. You're really good at a lot of stuff, music, writing, all sorts of things.
Thank you. I am sort of an artistic, creative, whirling dervish, even more so after the NPE discovery. So, and that artistic talent sort of plays into my story as well. So I'm happy to talk about that. And thank you very much for the compliment. I'm working on a book right now, which I'm in the editing process of about this whole situation. So hopefully we can help some people and get this stuff out there so that there doesn't have to be a stigma against being an NPE, and that hopefully there are resources like yours, which I think are so wonderful. Because when I found out 3 years ago, there weren't a lot of resources for this situation, and I really didn't know where to turn.
So true. And since we're talking about it, instead of waiting till the end, people are going to want to know right now. Can you direct us to what your blog is or your website?
CoryGoodrich.com, and that is Cory, C-O-R-Y, Goodrich, like the tires, Goodrich.com. And my artwork is up there, my music is up there, my blog is also all in this very congested artistic site.
I love it. And yeah, haven't you felt your creative juices flowing so much after finding out this painful, devastating, or wonderful news, depending on your journey?
It's a lot of both, actually, and artistically having my normal outlets was interesting. And I'll tell you the whole story too, but I usually write music, and I am a singer. I am an actress. But after the discovery, I could not write a song to save my soul. And that was my main thing of how I express myself. And when I discovered painting, which is part of the story, that exploded. I can't believe the amount of work that I do painting. And now I am actually, people buy my paintings, which blows my mind. But that became my main artistic outlet. And it was so important to have that art therapy as I was going through the process of discovery and pain and dealing with all the trauma. So if you can find anything to channel yourself into, I highly recommend it during this process.
That is so interesting. Like one part of your brain kind of got quiet, and then all of a sudden this new part, this painting, just exploded. That is so interesting. I didn't even realize you were also a painter.
I'll get to that. I'll tell you all about it.
Okay, so I don't know your story. Take it from the beginning and give me some background on your family and let me know a little bit about your childhood.
Okay, I feel you might need diagrams or little salt and pepper shakers. Right? This is true with all of us. Like, Carrie Fisher has a wonderful book. I think it's Wishful Drinking, and she talked about Eddie Fisher and her father and Debbie Reynolds and all the characters. And you had to, in her show, she actually has a flow chart so you can understand it. And I feel very much the same. So I was born in Delaware. My mother is Ernestine, and my father was Tom Goodrich. I was the youngest of four. So I have three older siblings, and the age gap between the closest brother is 7 years. So I was the baby. And we lived in Delaware until I was 7, and Ernie and Tom got divorced, and we moved to Michigan with my mother and my stepfather. Um, I never understood why Ernie and Tom got divorced. I mean, I was 7, of course, but it was always so. I would ask my mother, why she did this, why we brought this, because life was sort of traumatic, I think, in Michigan for me and my brother, and adjusting to a whole different, Midwestern culture as opposed to Eastern, and new school and new friends, and I didn't really understand what happened. My mother would never talk about what happened in the divorce, which, that's her business, of course. But as I got older and I had children of my own, I mean, we battled. I would constantly ask her the answer to this question: Mama, why did you get divorced? She would never answer me. She would say things like, it's my life, Cory. She would say, there are things that you don't know about your father. I idolized my father, Tom. And so when she said that, I thought, oh my goodness, what did he do? Did he do something to hurt her? Did he abuse her? I mean, she just shut it down and would not talk. Now, all through my childhood, I felt, and this is a very common thing with people in our situation, I felt different from the rest of my siblings. Not in a bad way necessarily, but just something was different. They were all blonde as babies. I was dark. They all have my father's height. I was short. I looked very much like my mother, so I didn't question it too much. But there were times that I would say, why am I so different? Why is my demeanor so different from my other three siblings? They're all very, very quiet and funny, and I'm very loud and actress and all that. So these little things just sort of played in my mind. I did have a memory of being in a hotel room with my mom and a strange man. I don't know how old I was. I was very, very young because I remember a crib being in the hotel room. There was, those doors in hotel rooms when they join two units
Mhm.
together. I remember that, but I must have been. I mean, I had to have been under 3 years old. So I have this memory. Then when I was 16, I was looking through pictures with my mother, and I found a picture of a man that I'd never seen before, and he was holding me as a baby. And I asked my mom who that was, and she said, oh, it was just a friend, and she could never forgive my dad for what he had done to this man. I said, what did he do? She said, well, he was jealous of him, and so he had him transferred down south. So I remembered this. I didn't ask any more questions because, as I said, I'd been asking these questions of my mother all along and would get shut down. But I remembered that picture. Flash forward to I was 51 by this point, and my mother went in for open heart surgery. And so I spent the week with her before her death. She eventually died not from the surgery, but from in a week or so after the open heart surgery. She was 89 by that time, so we weren't really expecting her to pull through. But I thought I would broach this subject one more time with her. She was very sick by this time, so I didn't want to push too far. But I did ask her, Mama, why did you and Daddy get divorced? And she said, well, I had an affair. You knew that. And I thought, did I know that? Not really. I have these memories, obviously, and there's the picture, but I didn't really put it together, And I asked her about it, and she told me the story. I asked her a little bit. She told me a story about a little bit how the wife had asked her to shut down the affair. But that's all she said. And she didn't go any further, and she was really sick by this time, so I didn't want to push her and get her upset. She goes through the surgery. A week later, she dies. She passes away. And I was going through her pictures for her Memorial of Life celebration. And she had carefully curated this box of memories. There was a folder of her. She was a performer when she was a very young girl with her two sisters, like an Andrews Sisters type of group. And she had all the clippings and the pictures of that part of her life, which I had never seen. There was another envelope full of pictures of her mother and father and her sisters growing up, which I had also never seen. She never showed me any of these. There was a section of her first marriage. Never saw any of those photos. Then there was an envelope that had three letters and two pictures. And these two pictures were the pictures that I remembered from when I was 16 years old. So here I have this picture of this man, this strange man. And I turned to my siblings who were going through the box. I'm like, hey, do you guys know who this is? You were old enough to know about this relationship. Is this the guy that, that Mama had an affair with? And they confessed at that time that they knew all about it. And though they weren't sure, I was this man's child. So it's the day after my mother's death. I'm reeling from her death as it is. And then they tell me, and my sister confessed that she had known my whole life that this man was my father. I was I can't even describe the spiral that I felt at that moment. Just like, it's like the earth dropped out from under me, because now I'm not my father's child anymore. I'm not Tom's child anymore. I'm not a Goodrich. My name is Cory Goodrich. I didn't change my name when I got married because I was so determined to carry on my father's name. And that name isn't mine anymore, and the fact that everybody suspected or knew my whole life and never said anything, I was in a terrible, terrible state and mourning my mother all at the same time. So I found also in this envelope a letter, and it was a letter from this man whose name was Don to my mother written when I was about 10 years old, and basically confirmed that I was his child. I have his name, I don't have anything else. I just have the fact that he probably lived in Delaware at the time I was born. And I went to Google and I Googled his name and Delaware, and up popped his obituary. Now, I didn't know that it was him, but the second I locked eyes on that picture of the obituary, I was pretty certain that that was my father, which was the most surreal experience at that moment, to stare at my father from a computer screen as I'm sitting on a couch in Arizona, 51 years after my birth. So I tried to confirm all of this. There was really no way. I was trying to do internet research. I didn't want to hire a private investigator or anything, but I was trying to find anything that would confirm this. And of course I couldn't. But I did find in this obituary, there was a mention of a child, with Don and his wife. And I debated because I didn't want to uproot anyone's lives. I didn't want to upset his wife. I didn't want to upset my presumed new brother, and didn't know how they would react. But eventually I was just so eaten up with all this and wanting to know who I was, and wanting to know my health history, and wanting to know about the love story that existed. So I was unsure if I should reach out to this new family, but I wrote an email to the funeral home and asked them to pass on my condolences. And the funeral home said, we will pass on your information. And then I waited. I waited for somebody to contact me, and I was a nervous wreck by this point, not knowing if I had done the right thing by reaching out to them, not wanting them to think that I wanted anything. But I really had to know. I wanted to know my history, and I wanted to know where I came from. 2 days later, I get an email from my brother, my younger by 10 years, half brother. And he says, "Hi, this is Lee. How can I help you?" And I didn't want to tell him the story because I wasn't sure that it was actually him either, that he was my brother or this was my father. So I sent the picture. But I cut out the baby. I cut out baby me out of this picture, and I just sent the picture of the man holding the baby. But I left my little baby hand in there as sort of a clue, so that if he really looked into it, he could, he would understand what I was asking. He wouldn't confirm right away that he said, I think this is Pop, but I haven't seen pictures from this era, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe we should talk. I know he knows by this point. He can guess. So the next day, he calls me, and from France. He was in France, and I just spilled out this entire story of what I had pieced together and what I thought, but I wasn't sure. And he was silent the whole time, and I thought, oh my gosh, he doesn't believe me, or how does this sound? I sound like I'm a crazy person, And then he just very calmly asked a few questions and asked for confirmation, and he was so emotional and just opened his arms to me and said, I always wanted a sister, you know. So what he told me later was that when he first got the email, he Googled me and he found my picture, my headshot, my professional headshot. And he took one look at that and went, oh, I have a sister. He knew immediately that we were related, just like I knew when I found the obituary and the picture of my father that was my father. So,
Mm.
so we did a DNA test to confirm that we were indeed half siblings, and it came out with 99.476% certainty that we were related. And we were both floored, and I was still, this was around Christmas time, just in a swirl about all of this, not understanding why it bothered me so much. Nothing had changed in my life, really, except for my mother was gone, but everything felt different. I felt different. I'm the same person. I was alive for 51 years. Why should I feel different through this discovery? Lee came out to meet me. He flew out to Chicago, and we met, and then we flew to Denver, and we visited our father's grave, which was absolutely surreal to me. That I'm standing there at the gravesite of my birth father. And Lee and I have been best friends ever since. He's 10 years younger than me, but he is truly, I mean, the greatest gift throughout all of this to me is my relationship with my brother. My other, my existing siblings have, I think they kind of wonder what the heck I'm doing and why I care so much, like maybe I should just get over this. It doesn't matter. Tom was still my dad. And that's a thing I think that we all hear frequently. Your father is still your father. And every time I hear that, I'm like, yes, he is my father. And I greatly appreciate Tom. And for raising me, he knew that I was not his child, but he continued to raise me as his own. And I am profoundly grateful for that love and that acceptance. But there's still another side of me that wants to know everything about my new family and where I came from. And it doesn't mean that I don't love Tom Goodrich, but I want to know these other pieces. I want to know, like, okay, is my temperament that is so different from my family's, does that come from my biological father? And the more I talk to Lee, the more I see that it does. I mean, he and I are so much alike. That I sort of discover my father through him. Obviously, did I say? Yes, it was his obituary. So he had died. So we'll never get a chance to meet Don. But I sort of learn about him through Lee and through talking to him. So after we go to Denver, I'm still swirling. I'm still in a really bad downward spiral, still researching, still looking for pictures. And I thought, well, maybe I could start drawing or something. I need to do something. Have some art therapy, and I started drawing cartoons. I found out that my brother Lee had done a very sort of famous cartoon panel, and I thought, well, maybe I'll do this. And I started drawing cartoons of depression and this dark monster that sort of was chasing after me. And it's like, oh, this is really cool. This is actually really helping. And then I went to watercolors, and I played around with watercolors for a while. And Lee says, your father was a painter. I'm like, what? He was? He said, yes, he worked in acrylics. He's like, get off the watercolors and go to acrylics. So I started painting in acrylics, and I have never picked up a paintbrush in my life. Maybe I sketched when I was little in elementary school. And when I picked up that brush, I knew what to do. I didn't know if it was me or if it was my father painting through me, which sounds kind of crazy, but I just knew what to do. And eventually I moved over to oils. And now, like, this is part of my career. And this is how I make my living, is by painting. And that is solely, I never would have picked up that brush if I had not known about my father. So
that is so cool. I have to interject for a minute just because I love this part of the story. So you became a painter like 2 years or 3 years ago, and this is part of your livelihood now?
yeah, maybe 18 months, 2 years ago. Yeah, was the first time I had ever picked up anything. Now, the funny thing is, too, is my mom had said to me somewhere along the line, have you ever thought about painting? And I said, no, I hate painting. I would be a terrible painter. So she knew. I mean, she and my biological father met in art class, which is hilarious to me that she knew, and she sort of planted that little nugget. Um, and I said, no, I would never, because it never occurred to me ever. It's not some latent thing that I thought, oh, I'll do this later in life. I never wanted to do this. It was solely through looking for an outlet. And sometimes when I would pick up the brush, I would, without this sounding too metaphysical, hippy dippy or anything, but I would feel Don. I would feel like he was painting with me. Now, whether that's a ghost or whether it's my own desire, to manifest my father, it doesn't really matter. Um, and so I think it's so cool. I'm sitting in my studio right now looking at all the paintings that I've done. And yeah, that's part of my livelihood, which is crazy.
This is fascinating, by the way. I love this part of your story. I didn't realize.
Well, thank you. Yeah, which makes you wonder, like, how much genetic memory do we have, or how much is nature versus nurture, and how much of that talent is his that came down to me that I wouldn't have never discovered if it hadn't been for this. So.
And now, what about your other half siblings? Is Lee? So they're younger than you, correct?
Well, Lee is 10 years younger than me, but there were two siblings who were about the ages of my older brother and sister.
Was Don married as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So your mom was married, and Don, your birth father, were married when you were conceived.
Correct. And
Okay.
had two children of his own, and that, so that relationship has been a little more tenuous, but I give them time and space because they didn't ask for this either. I one of the points that I keep harping on, with my family and my story and everything, is that this was not my fault. I didn't ask for this, and so in that respect, they didn't ask for this either. So I have great sympathy for them, understanding that might be difficult to think of their dad with another woman and all that. So I just kind of let that go and wait till people are ready and try not to push anything there.
Yes, I know. So Don knew you were his child your whole life.
Yes.
Right.
Apparently, I took vacations with him and my mother when I was very young, but I don't have any memory other than the hotel room memory that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so he knew I existed. And I mean, it is a complicated story. With he eventually got transferred to another company or to another division of the company because they found out about the affair. I mean, it was the late 60s, early 70s when this happened. So I keep going back to the fact, what was my mother supposed to do? Was she supposed to leave her other three kids to go run off with this man? Was he supposed to leave his children? It is complicated to me that my mother didn't tell me this story. But at the same time, I have so much empathy and sympathy for her and her plight. This is a very gossipy, tight-knit community. What were they saying? I'm sure that there were rumors swirling. And what was she supposed to do in that time period? I think so many of us, when we make this discovery, there's a tendency, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering now. There is a tendency sometimes to blame our mothers more than fathers, I think, but primarily the mothers get a lot of the blame on all this. But I just keep saying, what could she have done? This was a no-win situation for her. So I do have great empathy for her. I wish she'd told me, but she wanted me to remain a Goodrich, and she wanted me to have this sense of stability. I struggle sometimes with, wondering what she is thinking, or she's not thinking, but if she could see all this now, would she just be mortified that I'm pursuing it? Would she be happy? I don't know.
And where are you at today with your NPE journey? It sounds like you have a wonderful relationship with your newfound half sibling, Lee, right?
Yes, he is the gift of this whole experience. I love him so much, and I am so lucky to have him as a brother. I really am. Um, it's almost 3 years. It will be 3 years this October, the anniversary of my mom's death and this discovery. I would say that the first 2 years were honestly sheer hell. I tried so many different, I did therapy, I did all kinds of self medication, just trying to work through this. I did yoga, and, I have anxiety and depression through all of this. And it took a long, long time, much longer than I expected, much longer than anyone else expected to work through all this stuff, and a lot of therapy and a lot of, just self reflection. But at about the 2 year point, I was like, okay, I'm coming to grips with this. And now at the 3 year point, I feel more myself than I have ever been in my entire life. It has been a really difficult journey to get here, but I'm so happy I know now. And now I'm happy that I have the gift of my brother, of painting, of knowing the story and the truth of who I am. So often it's not the actual event, I think, of being an NP that's the hard part. It's the lies and the cover up that go into it. I think that damages us more. But of course, I think, you'll find a lot of people in my age group. This was a time when people covered up that stuff. I think now people get divorces more readily. People are more accepting of different families. But for my mom's generation, it was unthinkable. What else would she have done but cover this up? So, yeah, but at the 3 year point, I am doing fantastic, actually.
You sound like it. I can't wait to get to 3 years.
Where are you in this?
I think I'm at about 15 months,
Yeah.
and it's still raw, but it is much better than, when you're the NP and you're only 3 months into it and you're still shaky every night.
Right? Right. I
Yeah.
don't think people realize, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to write this book too, was not just to like do a tell-all expose or anything, but I wanted people to know how traumatic this experience is for us. And you would never think in a million years, unless you've walked in our shoes, I would never think that I would have reacted this way. One of my brothers, like, he says, if this was me, if this happened to me, I wouldn't have any questions. I would just accept Tom as my dad and be done. And I reply to him, well, but he is your father. So of course you don't have any questions. And if you had told me before this was going to be how I would react, I never would have believed you. I would have thought that I would have, just wanted to stay with things as they were too. So it's a surprise to all of us how long it takes. And it's trauma. You sort of have PTSD from this discovery, or you can anyway.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You can. And okay, so you're writing a book. How is the progress going on that?
Really, really well. It was really difficult to write this. Mostly I started to write the book because I wanted to remember the events surrounding my mom's death before. You know what happens with time. You sort of conveniently forget things. Your mind tries to protect you. So I wanted to make sure I wrote down all the details as they happened so that I would remember them, so I could take them out and look at these little pieces of things. Initially, I started writing just as journaling and just sort of as therapy. But as I kept doing this and kept writing down these thoughts and reading about other NPEs who were struggling and seeing how similar our journeys were and how we were all sort of experiencing the roller coaster and the loss of identity and just the upside downness that we're in, that there really needs to be another account for somebody to read so that they can relate to it, or at least say, I am not crazy for being 2 years in and thinking my world is still upside down. So I just kept writing, knowing that I didn't have an ending yet, but I just kept writing and kept putting it together. And it became just sort of traumatic every time I went through to edit, because, then I start reliving it all again. And but when the pandemic hit, I thought, this is really time for me to do this. And I had obviously, a lot of downtime without work. So I found an editor who, this story is unbelievable too. So I found this woman that a friend had recommended to me, and I didn't want to reach out to her. And finally, she bugged me enough that I'm like, fine, I will call this person. The editor that I called actually lived half a mile from me, or a mile from me in Delaware. And her father also worked for the same company that my biological father worked for. And when she called her father to ask him about my biological father, her father worked with him.
Oh, weird.
It was the strangest, like most synchronistic turn of events. And I'm like, okay, you're hired. So Elizabeth Lyons is my editor. She's amazing. And she's going to publish this book with me. And I think I have something really beautiful. And I think hopefully other NPEs will be able to read it and relate, or not relate, but at least see another aspect of this. And I think that's important. We need stories to relate to.
Yes, we do. I'm going to devour it. I devour anything NPE related. So good luck with finishing that up. And thank you for telling us about it. I will put this in the show description, including your blog again. But at this point, is there, if people want to get in touch with you, can you say again how they can do that?
My website is corygoodrich.com, CoryGoodrich. My blog is on there, my artwork, a couple of my albums, my theatrical career, all that stuff. It's on there. And I think you can email me through there too.
So cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before I close?
Hang in there. I think that's the one thing I would say to anybody going through this is do what you need to do. Take the time. Go to therapy if you need to. If you do yoga, do all the things. It's okay to want to have answers to your past. Whatever it is that you are feeling, no matter how wrong somebody might tell you that it is for having these feelings, it's not. Your reaction to this is your reaction, and you have to process it and just keep going. And reach out to other people who've been through it.
Thank you so much, Cory. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate it too. Thank you.
I just have one more personal question. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about editing your book and having to kind of reread some of those painful memories, kind of gets you back into that state.
Right.
How about talking about it today with me and resharing your story? Do you feel okay, or did it not feel good resharing that?
I am at a point right now where I can talk about it without tears. Although there were a couple of moments where I get a little emotional. I could very easily cross over into that. But I've also, the more I share it, the more I experience it, the more I realize that other people are experiencing the same things too. The more I realize how important it is. The only thing we have to share are our experiences and our stories. And so I do find it sort of a mission to destigmatize, so many of the issues that we have as NPEs, that horrible B word and illegitimate. And it's hard, but it's necessary. And it's only by walking through the fire that we're going to come out forged. I'm mixing my metaphors here, but we become steel when we're forged in these fires, And so I do feel stronger now. If you had asked me this where you are at 15 months or something, at that point I was still crying anytime anybody talked about family or didn't talk about family, or I heard a song on the radio that reminded me of something. I would burst out in tears constantly. So 3 years isn't too bad, really.
Well, it sounds good. Yeah. Sounds like a good place to be.
Yeah. Yep. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Thanks again to Cory for sharing today. These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE that would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come heal with us.